Welcome to Instant Reactions for Week 7 of the 2023 CFL season, where I just watched the BC Lions beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders 19-9 at BC Place. And obviously the big story coming out of this one was the injury to Vernon Adams Jr. in the first quarter. Looked like it was a knee injury, did not look very good. He tried to get on the exercise bike, just did not look like he could put any pressure on that leg at all. So all the best to Vernon Adams going forward. Hopefully it's a speedy recovery and it's not anything too serious, but again, did not look good. Obviously this led to Dane Evans coming into the game for the BC Lions. And I think with Dane, it was kind of a mixed bag tonight. I think he made some good throws, but also had a couple of turnovers, which were obviously a big problem for him last year in Hamilton. So he'll need to clean that up going forward. But I do think that this team can win with Dane Evans if Vernon is out long term. I think that this defense gives them a good shot to win like they did tonight. They were really excellent. Gary Peters with an interception in this one. I think the defensive line looked great. I think they really shut down the run, tackled great, and weren't allowing anything after the catch for Saskatchewan. So great news for the Lions. I think their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games, even with Dane Evans at quarterback. But I think that two things to watch. One, the turnovers, like I mentioned, I think that Dane Evans is more prone to turnovers than Vernon Adams is, even though Vernon had that big 6-interception game earlier this year against Toronto. But also, I think the play extension ability that Vernon Adams brings to the table is obviously a big strength of his game. And I think that Dane, you're just not going to get that same level of play extension ability from him. So I think with BC's offensive line showing some regression in recent weeks, that's something to monitor for BC going forward. But obviously they moved to 5-1, padded their stats a little bit in terms of the standings. So I think that will really help them going forward and navigating this potential loss of their starting quarterback. But obviously still sucks at the end of the day to lose your starting quarterback no matter what the circumstances. And I think that, going forward, it's going to be very interesting to see if this affects the Western hierarchy, if Calgary can get back in the mix, if Saskatchewan can, shake off the loss from tonight and, go on a run themselves and really put together a good second half of the season or last 2/3 of the season here. It's going to be very interesting to see how BC plays going forward. Does Winnipeg take back the West effectively? BC still in first after the win to date, so should be interesting to see the Lions going forward. But again, all the best to Vernon Adams. And then moving on to Saskatchewan, my big takeaway from this one was obviously Mason Fine making his first CFL start of the season this year. He got a couple of starts late last year, but I think that this was really one of his first tests as a true CFL starting quarterback, because last year was kind of a write-off near the end of the year for Saskatchewan. And I think that overall he looked okay, but ultimately no touchdowns on the board, really nothing deep down the field, a lot of passes short of the sticks on second down, which drives me crazy a lot of the time. I don't know if that was on Fine or the Roughriders play calling, but that needs to be fixed going forward. You can't end up with 9 points in a CFL game and expect to win most weeks. So I'm really interested to see how that goes going forward for the Roughriders, if their quarterback play can get better. I think their defense really showed up in this one, gave them a real chance to win. It was good to see, Pete Robertson really re-emerging towards his play from last season, where he was a candidate for most outstanding defensive player. I think Micah Johnson played pretty well up front for them in this one as well. So I think there were some bright spots for the Roughriders in this game, and that they were able to really keep this game close despite their struggles on offense and their inability to stay on the field on offense. So should be interesting to see how the Roughriders navigate the loss of Trevor Harris, or continue to navigate the loss of Trevor Harris going forward. But I think that, obviously they'll need more from their offense if they want to, keep in this Western playoff race going forward. It should be very interesting now. They're 3-3, and Calgary, if they win tomorrow, will be 3-3. I don't know what the tiebreaker would be, because they both won one game in the season series. So the next game in that season series is going to be huge for that potential tiebreaker there. But I mean, again, with BC suffering that quarterback injury, you never know what's going to happen with the West standings going forward. Should be very interesting with all these quarterbacks going down. Really is unfortunate, but it kind of creates some chaos down the stretch here in the CFL. So it should be interesting to see how that plays out. But ultimately, at the end of the day, not too much to say about Saskatchewan, or really this game in general, because, I was hoping I would have a lot to say, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't too many explosive plays in this one. Weren't too many, obviously, lead changes with the lack of scoring. So ultimately, just a strong defensive effort from the BC Lions in this one, and they get the W here. And then, as I mentioned on the community tab last night, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Tiger Cats and Argos game from last night. As a Tiger Cats fan, just pretty sick of how this team has started games to begin this year. Just very poor first halves. I think that they really didn't give Taylor Powell, who was making his first start as a CFL quarterback in this one, a chance to win this game, going down 20-0 in the first half. Obviously, he had that one bad decision that led to that interception, but I think that overall, Powell played very well. But, I mean, as soon as you go down multiple scores, it's hard to ask your quarterback making his first career CFL start to come back and win. So I think that's really important for the Tiger Cats going forward to get off to better starts. They dig themselves another hole to begin the season, 2-4. I mean, they got a couple of wins the last couple of weeks against the bottom feeders of the CFL in Ottawa and Edmonton, but ultimately, when they go up against a good team like Toronto and all the other teams that they played so far this year, they've been soundly beaten. So it's not looking so good for the Tiger Cats going forward. I think the biggest problem really on this team, if I had to point to anything, I think one is the secondary that they decided to go really young at this year. I think it's really bite them in the ass. I think that the defensive line that they brought in and spent all that money on has not paid off. And, you know, they had the opposite thing last year where they paid the defensive backs, not so much on the defensive line. Same results for this defense. And I think that's the most discouraging thing, that this defense, it used to be a really big hallmark of this organization, has declined year after year for this team. So I think that's really disappointing. I think offensively, the biggest issue is the red zone. They just have not been able to execute no matter who's quarterbacking this team this year in the red zone. I think they've ultimately settled for field goals far too often. I think Mark Leggio has been one of the most overused kickers in the league since he's signed with the team. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they need to score more touchdowns in Hamilton if they want to win going forward. Obviously, Toronto is just in a class of their own right now, just completely above the Tiger Cats in every way, and I think every other East team as well, as we saw last week when they beat Montreal as well. So I think at the end of the day, I think Toronto is just a great story for the CFL. I think Chad Kelly is the story of the year, much like Nathan Rourke was at the beginning of last season. Hopefully we see this continue over the course of the season. Even as a Ticats fan, I'm really loving what Chad Kelly is bringing to the Argos. A lot of excitement to that organization that we really didn't get with McLeod Bethel-Thompson. So I'm really excited for the Argos season going forward. This is one of their best starts they've had in many, many decades. So, I mean, congratulations to Argos fans. Really happy for them. But at the end of the day, for my Tiger Cats, they just need to learn from this and, you know, hopefully get better going forward and stop losing games so convincingly after this, you know, terrible start to the season. And I wanted to close it out on this because I think that this is something that Tiger Cats fans have thought that the Tiger Cats have had an advantage on the last couple of years, but I think ultimately the true colors have been shown in terms of the coaching staffs for both of these teams. I think the Argos clearly have the better coaching staff when these two teams play. I think that we've seen these matchups with different players, but ultimately we've seen around a 10-game sample size over the last couple of years of these two teams playing, with the Ryan Dinwiddie-led Toronto Argonauts and the Orlando Steinauer-led Hamilton Tiger Cats. And ultimately, I think that Ryan Dinwiddie has really outschooled the defensive head coach in Orlando Steinauer. So I think that's something to watch going forward. Is this Tiger Cats coaching staff really just figured out? I think that's a big question. I think that, I mean, it's just gotten worse year after year. I think that the first year they were first place, obviously, 15-3. Second year in 2021, they were 8-6, second place in the East. Last year, 8-10, third place in the East. Are they going to finish fourth this year? I think that's definitely in the realm of possibility, but it's going to be interesting to see. I think the coaching staff is a major concern for the Tiger Cats going forward, and if things don't turn around soon, I think there's going to be changes by the end of the season. But with that said, that is just my instant reaction to the Saskatchewan and BC game from tonight, as well as a few of my thoughts on the Toronto-Hamilton game from Friday. Be sure to check out the recap show on Monday with Reed over on his channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.